All right, everyone. Welcome to episode number 29 of the Rental Roundtable. We have on Grant Christopher, president of Christopher Equipment, 4 locations in Tennessee. Grant, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully I can provide some good information for you guys.
I'm excited to have you on for a lot of reasons, one of which is you're an active listener to the podcast. I think you've listened to many of the episodes so far, so hopefully no surprise questions today. One of the things, not to embarrass you too much, but you were, just for the audience, we'll get into, Grant's business here in a second, but recently listed as one of the ARA's 12 to watch under 40. So congratulations on that. It's an exciting award. Not everyone gets to be on that list. So sort of a testament to the business you've been building at Christopher Equipment. I know you're probably excited about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I was thrilled to be selected. That was a pretty big honor for me. I was happy. So thank you.
Good. Well, welcome to the attendees. Let's see. Kyle's here, Dave, just a couple people, Charlie, Buck, Megan, welcome everyone, Peter, Renford, good to see you guys. Feel free to chat questions in as we go through this. And if you obviously listen to it later on the podcast, thanks for jumping in. So a lot to talk about today. Grant, first thing I want to talk about is, Charlie Pearson says, good morning. I know, Grant, I think you know Charlie Pearson, peer executive. Hey, Charlie. Few topics to jump into, one of which I like to start with is usually how did you get into the rental business, right? And I know with your story, it was a family business. There was some succession planning, which can be complicated, right? So walk me through, you graduated from University of Tennessee, thinking about what you want to do. How did you get into the rental business? And walk me through where we are today in September 2024.
Yeah. So I guess, I'm second generation. So my dad bought Christopher Equipment. Well, it's called something else in that time, but back in 1990, I was born in 93. So, growing up, it wasn't always a 4-location business. It started with 1 and then, steadily grew over the years. But, I would always come into work with him and he'd have me do different things. And so I was always very involved. We used to do party rental as well. We get rid of that in 2017. But I was always I was doing a lot on that side too. It's a very labor intensive side of the business. So I was always involved, especially once I got into high school and could drive. I never really knew at the time what I wanted to do. I knew I liked working and, making my own money. And I think it taught a lot, about the value of a dollar and different things like that. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to college, went into, got a degree in business management. And I was like, well, I guess I'll come back and work for the family business. So, I came back. Day one, he put me at one of our stores to manage. Saw some good growth out of there, and he just slowly kept feeding me a little more responsibilities and teaching me different things. And eventually I got to where I was basically running, the whole operation here. And then, as I got a little older, the thought of purchasing the business did come up, and I mentioned it to him, and he was on board because I think in that aspect, you get, planning ahead is always good. You don't want to wait till he's real old and I'm getting older to try to figure out what you want to do. So, me and my dad's relationship is really good. I don't know how I got so lucky with him. Honestly, he's one of my best mentors. And a lot of people say they can't work with their family. I don't even think we had an argument one time in the business. So that just kind of tells you what kind of person he is. So we worked out a plan, and just made it happen. So April of 2023, I purchased the business, and so now I'm the owner. So
that's awesome. Well, 1993, you were born. I think I finally have a guest who's younger than me. So, you're younger than me, you're a baby here. But 2023, you bought the business. When did you realize that this was going to be sort of your path, right? Now you bought it, you're locked in. I'm not saying you're doing it for the next 50 years, but for the foreseeable future, right? You're the owner, you're growing the business, you're investing in it. You bought it in 2023. When did you start to have those conversations that you're thinking, hey, actually, this is something I'm excited about. I would be interested in purchasing the business?
That's a little tough. I would say when I came in 2016, after I got out of college, I treated everything like it was my own right from the start. So I really, at the time, is more of just on paper getting the ownership changed. But I will say after I did become owner, it did kind of change my outlook on things. And, it does give you a boost of I'm going to make these changes. And create the vision that I, want to see and, work towards a goal. So it did definitely change for me mentally, I guess, even though I wasn't expecting that. So that was a surprise. But, yeah, and I joined peer executive groups, and they really helped me create a vision for my company and figure out where I want to go. And it's very motivating to take a look at their businesses and just see what's possible and, get some great advice from them.
Yeah, there's a theory of like management for like promoting people, right? You usually promote them after they've already been doing the new job for a period of time, right? And it sounds like you were acting like an owner even before you actually were the owner, right? And that probably made that transition for your dad a lot easier when you're showing up to work, you're doing the extra hours because you feel like it's yours. By the time you actually bought the business, it was sort of just paperwork. Like, and it was more like you'd actually already been the owner up until that point, in a sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But it definitely does, yeah, give you a little motivation too. I'm not gonna lie, but
Yeah.
I think taking ownership of your actions and what you do at work is very important, whether you own something or not. Um, so I've always tried to take ownership of my actions. So it just worked out good.
Yeah. Well, there's horror stories on succession planning, especially with families. Anytime you sell a business, it can be challenging, especially when you do it with family member. Sounds like yours has gone as smooth as it really could go. If you ever watched the show Succession, right? That's the other extreme version.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Going off the rails. But I'm curious, like for you and your dad, like what are some of the things that went well? Like, I mean, mostly like we're talking to people here one day will sell the business to their son or something, or the son who may buy it from, the father who may be listening in. So what are some of the things you guys did early on to make sure that transition was as seamless as possible?
So I think we both went into it with the understanding of, what's fair. I have a sister who's not involved in the business. So it has to, it needs to be fair for her. And obviously I want it to be fair for my mom and dad because, they worked their whole lives to build this up, and I'm not necessarily wanting any handouts. I want them to be able to, retire and have a good life because they've earned it. So we both went into the conversations with the idea that, we want what's fair for everybody. So that helped. And then working with family, there's more trust in the process. I knew everything, that was going on the business side. So there's no surprises on that. And just, I'm trying to think. And then also like tax wise, it's nice to, if you're working with family, you can take some other, use some other avenues to reduce, what taxes are going to be owed that you wouldn't necessarily do with a third party that you didn't trust. So, it worked out well. There wasn't any speed bumps. And I think it was like less than 6 months to get it all done after first brought up. So,
wow, it's great. I think the important thing is, doing the right thing, doing the right thing for all shareholders, right? So making sure it's fair for your father, but also for you too, right? You want to grow this and have a return at some point. Were there any particular industry experts that you worked with to sort of help with value the business and sort of use some best practice to kind of get through that process? Like any mentors that you leaned on for that?
No, I mean, we kind of came up with a valuation based on, our fleet size and what there's EBITDA multiples and all sorts of things you can do to value the business. So we kind of just came up with a value that seemed fair. And then we got with a lawyer and drafted up everything we needed to do and just made it happen. I didn't really get too many people involved. I mean, we asked them advice for some other family businesses, that have been successfully transitioned, just to see if there's any do's or don'ts. Because, you have heard those horror stories of it tearing the family apart. Now nobody talks to each other, or the business goes under because of poor planning and execution. So, yeah.
Were there any challenges, or is there anything that you would do differently? Looking back, I mean, it sounds like it went as smooth as it could go, right? Like, is there anything you would have done differently?
I really don't think so. I mean, you could say like, oh, maybe I could have tried to do it earlier, but I think there was a lot of maturity and learning, that I needed to do before this happened. So I think it worked out about as good as it could. So I really don't have any complaints on it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, sounds like it was a natural, smooth transition. Speaking of, so that's sort of the passive how we've gotten here. You mentioned your vision statement of sort of where things are moving. What is the vision of, where this goes next, right? Because when you were born, when you first were around the business, it was one location, right? You shut the party side down. You've now gone to 4 locations. What are some of the things you're thinking about as we go into the next 3 to 5 years?
So like in broad terms, growth. So we're not exactly in huge towns here. So if I want to grow, I have to add locations realistically. So I'm looking at adding some new locations. I think there's a lot of technology advancement that's going to happen in our industry. We were kind of slow. I changed rail softwares last year, and that kind of, propelled me forward. Like there's just so much data that I wasn't looking at and didn't even know existed. And now that I'm starting to see it, it's really gave me a better snapshot of our company health, what decisions I need to make as far as what equipment I need to do or order. It's just, so I would say, growth of locations and technology adoption are my two like pillars of things I'm working on right now. And there's a lot of stuff that falls underneath both of those.
Yeah. Well, I know you spent some time with peer groups. We could talk about that in a little bit. Thinking about some of these things, I'm interested in drilling down here a little bit more. When you think about on the 2 topics here, so you mentioned growth, adding locations. Are you thinking cold start, starting a 5th location, 6th location, acquiring locations? How are you thinking about that?
That's a good question. So my old school way of thinking was always green starting or greenfield, I think is what they call it. Because I was like, well, I know what goes into starting one of these businesses. Why would I pay someone for, pay someone a premium for theirs? But the more I've looked into it, acquisition entrepreneurship is a good way to grow because you are buying some existing cash flow. You're buying their processes, their some employees there. So, you are paying a premium for it, but there is, I think there's benefits to both depending on what options are available. One issue that I think a lot of people run into when trying to expand is buildings. Rental kind of needs a weird set of has a weird set of requirements. So you need some warehouse space, you need some retail space, you need a good lot size. You don't necessarily want to be way out of town, so it's kind of hard to find when you're looking at different towns and cities. Find a location that's like, yeah, that looks like it could hold a rental yard. And the other question is, will that city want a rental yard in that location? Because we're not exactly the prettiest, kind of business. I
think gun yards are beautiful. I think they're great.
Yeah, I do too. But some people think otherwise.
Yeah. So how do you go through that process? How do you identify a location, a market enter? How do you value the business? I mean, I know you haven't done it yet, but when you're thinking through your 2 pillars, one of them is growing, adding locations, potentially through acquisition. How do you think through what the right decision is?
That's a good question. So right now, so we're 4 locations. Our main location, we're like hub and spoke. So our main location provides support to our satellite locations. So like our main shop is in Tullahoma, our office staff is in Tullahoma. So I can put these satellite stores with a lesser staff, so it just cuts some costs down. So looking at locations that I think I could support that aren't too far away from my main location, that's how I kind of begin searching, because that would be the easiest to integrate in our current setup. If I do go too far away, it needs to be self-sufficient, and there's just cost and other issues that can make that more challenging. So, and then as far as like acquisition or starting it up, really I just kind of started looking at property in that area and see if there's anything that stands out as being, it's like, I think that could work for us. And like the idea is like the last one we got, it was just a town that one of my employees lived in, and their rental store shut down, and it's like, you need to come here. And it actually, I just listened to what my customers are telling me, honestly. There's reports that I can look at, like income by zip code, and see, where some of our money is coming from that's farther away. And, but really it's just kind of, what are people telling me? What's the population size, and what, are we getting business from that market already that I could better serve if I was there? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's the big crazy goal? If we're talking 5 years, you come back on for Roundtable 429. How many locations are you looking to grow to? Five, six, 10? Like,
I would say in the next 10 years, I would like to at least have seven.
okay.
So I'd be at least three more, but I'd like to enter into a bigger market than our current situation, a bigger city,
Come
Tennessee.
down to Atlanta. There's plenty of building going on down here.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There is.
On the acquisition side, I actually just finished the book from the Brad Jacobs, the founder of United Rentals. I don't like the title. It's called How to Make a Few $1 billion, which is sort of a little arrogant in my mind. But he started 4 or 5 companies all worth $1 billion plus. One of them was obviously United Rentals. He started in the 1990s. And every business he went through, he grew almost through acquisition. That was his primary way to do it. And obviously he did a ton of roll-ups at United Rentals, buying independent rental companies. They're still doing that today. That was sort of surprising to me because obviously for me, like I like starting things. I'm not buying software companies. I like building this from scratch, but they're sort of eye-opening how they thought about it. And they're very disciplined. They had their metrics they looked at. They did not go 1% above the metrics if it didn't make sense. They had a big margin of error built into it. So even if their assumptions were wrong, it was still a profitable endeavor. They talked a lot about culture and how you integrate the different teams and things like that. And, I think they did hundreds of acquisitions, right, across all their different businesses. So I thought that was interesting how they view it. It wasn't necessarily starting from scratch. It was through acquisition. That's really how they became so dominant.
Yeah, I read a good book on that, Buy Then Build, which is about acquisition entrepreneurship. And that really highlighted some good points on why it is safer and smarter to buy a business than to build one from scratch, when you consider how many fail within, the first few years. So I think there is a lot into that. Like you said,
I read that before I started this company. I think for software companies, it's even higher, like 91% don't last 3 years. It's just like, okay, much easier to buy something. And obviously that's what you did. But I think as you kind of go forward, right, opportunistically, greenfield, cold start, et cetera, can make sense. But talk to a lot of groups who are buying successful business because you buy the property, you get the equipment, you get the operating systems, you get the employees, you get the customers, right? There's a lot of benefits to that. You get it at the right price, it can make a lot of sense. And the other thing we've heard is like making sure you're 2 hours, within 2 hours from your main location, because you do want to be able to transfer equipment. So don't go buy a bunch of locations in California and Washington and Maine, right? Like, which is how you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So that makes sense on the growth side. On the technology side, which is obviously what I like to talk about, like, crystal ball here, 3 to 5 years, not even just the basic things, but like, where do you see technology advancements happening and in the rental industry, maybe even things that don't exist yet? How are you thinking about technology? You're a younger guy, right? I think you're probably more tuned to trying and innovating on different things. What are some of the things you guys are thinking about?
Well, my big push. So, I did swap to this new software in 2023, which it takes months to honestly get really integrated with the new software and get, especially when you're importing data from your old software and several years of that. But I think, reporting and looking at all that, that's not really technology, but that's something that I've been growing into. And then e-commerce is really going to be the big change. The younger generation, they want to just get online, order what they want and get it taken care of. They don't like talking to people. They're shopping at night after work on their, computer or their phone. And so I think e-commerce is going to be huge eventually, especially as you get more of this younger generation in the workforce. And it's just, to me, like e-commerce, and that's like a salesman that doesn't take any days off. Your website is selling 24/7, 365 days a year. So why wouldn't you spend some time and money developing an attractive website with good information and be able to convert those leads into sales? I just can't believe like we're so far behind. And I know we've been making some advancements, but that's only been kind of recently, so e-commerce, I think, is huge.
On e-commerce website, they don't ask for raises. There's no workers' comp, right? Just is out, takes orders 24/7. Are you guys doing e-commerce today? How many, like, and what percentage of your orders today are coming in online?
Well, so I'm on Point of Rental. I don't think their e-commerce module is released just yet, but it does provide pricing and be able to do quote request. So it does give you the lead, but it doesn't necessarily take payment and convert the sale into, a rental or reservation. So I'm working towards it. It's not released yet, but we do see a lot of website traffic. I've been increasing advertising, trying to drive people to our website to go ahead and, prep for, the being able to add e-commerce. So we're not quite there yet, but we're working towards it. One issue with e-commerce, I think, would be, if you put bad data in your rental software, like if something breaks and you don't put a repair order on it or something, you're going to have your quantities are going to be off. So I think there's going to be some challenges. You're going to have to be real organized to make it effective, but I think that's just where you're going to have to go.
Yeah, I think everyone can say e-commerce, but execution matters. Even just taking 1 or 2 clicks out of the equation if you look at a funnel, right, you get 100% of people on your page and 80% go to the next page. And there's usually, like, by the time you get the submit order, you're down to 5% or something, right? There's big drop off. And if you start adding steps and things aren't set up, it matters a lot. I think that's probably I think the biggest thing people miss is, like, there's nuance matters, because people say, I have e-commerce, but it's like you look at it and it's not intuitive and there's a lot of clicks. So it really has to be streamlined. I do think that's something that was probably not, it was sort of speculative maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it's becoming a requirement. I think we talked, if you listen to the episode with Brian Gaster from Sunbelt, he is the VP of e-commerce there. He was saying even in 5 years from now, it's going to be totally unrecognizable around how technology has been integrated into the rental industry. And it's really around omni-channel. So, like, the whole idea is, like, you can, rent online, pick up in store, and it's multi-touch point, and technology is just integrated into the entire experience. That's the other thing, is people think it's like a binary thing. And a lot of times you got to think about the whole user experience. And there's people going to show up and just call you. They don't want to see your website. But there's a lot of people who are going to at least go to your website, right? ARA say 80% of all rental transactions involve going to your website. So if you don't have pricing, if you don't have the core stuff set up, that matters. And even if you're not getting 80% of your orders transacted online, they're still visiting your website. So I think I've just seen that myself. Like, I feel like it was something that was a nice to have a few years ago, but in the last 12 months, I think it's totally changed. Like, I think people are like, we need to have this now because United and Sunbelt are taking our business because we don't have it, right? I think that's sort of been changing pretty quickly, it seems like.
Yeah, I agree. And there's other parts of kind of e-commerce that would lump in, like, customer portal and other, features like that will be nice to have.
Yeah. And that's also, like, what United and Sunbelt, if you read their reports, what they've seen, like, e-commerce has still been a big thing, but the customer portal part is huge. Like, being able to go in, request extensions directly. Bill pay is huge also for your account customers, right? So you can go in, they got 3 open invoices. Let me make one payment. Credit cards stored online. You can do ACH payment. That's where it's going. And then I started thinking that once you have that set, where does the next level, right, sort of go to, right? I think that's where it starts to get exciting, because I think e-commerce is still sort of, compared to other industries, like, sort of table stakes, right? Amazon's been around for decades, right, doing e-commerce. I think the rental industry is, like, eager to catch up. And then it's more like, okay, how do we start to play offense? How do we start to move into some other different areas, which to me is pretty exciting.
Yeah. And like you said, like, some of this, your counter guys, like, how many phone calls do they get a day? Like, if some of those just ran through the e-commerce portal, then that frees them up to work on other things or make sales calls, so it really can have different, multiple different benefits. You might not even need as many counter staff, if so much is getting run. So I think it'll be a major cost savings and convert more sales if you do have it integrated.
Yeah. And I think ARA and what we see in Quipli, 20% or so, depending on the customer. Sometimes it's 3%, sometimes it's 50%, but roughly on average, 20% of all orders being done online. That's a meaningful amount. That doesn't count the people who shopped online and called you, right? So I do think that is becoming more and more important. The other thing on the technology side I've been hearing more often is around theft. Is that becoming up more common? I guess, is that becoming up more often as of late?
I can't really say, at least in our market, we've had that many issues, but I've heard more and more stories of people getting stuff stolen. And that's probably one area we need to work on. We're getting some driver's license scanners integrated right now. That'll help hopefully try to detect any fakes, and also will save pictures and stuff. So there's, having good policies and procedures in place can help prevent that. And just, trusting your gut really is kind of what it comes down to. There's several times I didn't trust my gut, and it bit me later. So I can't say it's been a huge issue in our market yet, but I have seen an increase in posts and different Facebook groups and stuff of people's things getting stolen. So
Yeah, I think about trusting your gut a lot. Like Jeff Bezos said, when you ever have the data saying one thing and your gut saying the other, trust your gut. You know, and so I think you sort of had that experience. I think theft can also be something that can be solved with better technology. Like telematics, right? There's a lot of great options there. Is huge, and then eventually, like some more identity verification, right? Scan the front and back of your license. Technology today, right? You can take a selfie of the customer and then it'll match and say that's the same person using AI, right? That exists today. So I think if that does continue to increase, I think there's some, technology advancements that can help around the theft and identity side as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I promise to be transparent here. I'll ask some more comments or questions. So Mike, related to a technology, talks about he's built a fuel management solution for equipment rental solutions. Allied Fuels, he's worked with Sunbelt and Herc. So on the fuel side, Mike had a comment there. Then Dave had a question for you around what point of rental tier are you using? Are you on Elite? I found that feels archaic and old feeling. How's customer service been? We're currently shopping for new software, and point of rental is one of the companies we're looking at despite a poor previous experience. So I guess the question for you, Grant, comments on how point of rental has been so far.
So let me start. So we were on some really old software that it was the first rental software that came to Windows, and we were on that for like 20 years or so. So everything impressed me after I, switched to something modern. Point of rental has its flaws. I think for our company, it just made the most sense. I wanted something that I could stick with for another 20 years and that would grow with me and be able to support a multi-location business. Their support can be slow. I can't say I've ever had just a critical issue that didn't get resolved timely. It can be frustrating, but they do have a lot of customers, and so support's not a huge issue. I've been, sometimes it can feel, we're on the cloud hosted version, and sometimes it does feel a little slow and archaic, but I mean, I don't know. To me, every rental software has its pluses and minuses. And at the time when I was shopping, I just felt like they matched up with our business the best. Ideally you could pick bits and pieces out of each rental software and build the best one for you, but that's just not an option. I've been happy with it, and you're welcome to give me a call and I'll chat about it some more after this. But it's really helped my business out, and hopefully with the addition of e-commerce, so we'll keep on going.
Cool. Well, thanks for answering that. I want to get into the peer group stuff that we sort of talked about. We both know Lance Bull. He's your facilitator. He's a good friend. Talk to me about how you got plugged into the peer executive groups and the value that they've offered you guys.
So I got a mentor this year, and he suggested, just a peer group in general, not this one specifically. So then I started looking into them, and I started seeing some good comments. So I was like, well, I'll check in and see what it's all about. And they included me in, I went to my first in-person meeting, last month, and man, it was a great experience. I really can't believe I didn't do it sooner. I feel like I missed out on a lot by not joining that sooner. They're just very data driven, and just, they care about their business. They're always driving forward. They use data to measure. Like, they're just an impressive group of guys and girls. And, even just one meeting is worth the whole year expense, in my opinion. I came back with, an insane amount of things to try and look into. It's almost overwhelming, but, it's been a great decision. I'm happy I'm in it.
Yeah, as we've talked before, I mean, we just sort of see the top tier groups are peer group members. I don't have any skin in the game, but I'm just very impressed with what they've done. And I just think learning from peers, right? Like learning from other people's successes and mistakes can shortcut a lot of challenges. And, starting and owning a business is hard, and I think it can be lonely. I think the community part is really important too. After that meeting, I'm just curious, you mentioned growth, adding location technology. What are some of the other sort of big takeaways that are sort of on your minds? You just got back from from this a couple of weeks ago.
So like they I guess you talked about traction on here. I think everybody in that group was, doing EOS or traction. And I had read the book previously, and I had, picked some bits and pieces out of it that I liked, and I started implementing. But I didn't really take it seriously as a whole, operating system. And they were, I had brought several problems to the group of things I'm trying to improve in my business. And it kind of all came back to like, if you implement this traction and, put your full effort into it, you'll solve a lot of those issues. So they were all about, traction. And a lot of it is, creating measurables and, having a vision and, meeting with your team. So it's nothing crazy, but it's just, taking it serious and following the steps that it puts out there. Otherwise, you kind of, it's easy to get distracted in business. So making the time to actually follow the procedure has really been beneficial to them. So I'm going to start trying to implement that. And then there's some other things. So like Ring Central, like phone systems, that was something they brought up. We, I've never really thought about my phones. They're just, we got 3 lines here and that's that. And then Ring Central, they're talking about all the data analytics that it can provide, call recording, AI transcription of calls. And there's just so many different features to that. Like there's just a lot of different little things like that like phones weren't even on my radar before I went there. And now it's like, man, that would really solve a lot of problems in my business. And just, there was other things, sales, they were all really sales oriented and I felt like we were lacking that department. So revisiting all that. So, it's just, you don't really realize what you're missing until you hear some other people's perspective and you're like, man, I could really improve in these areas. But it's just easy to get caught up in the day to day.
Yeah. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but sometimes if you're missing things that can make your business better, maybe not so much. And I think part of those groups is like just being aware of things you weren't necessarily aware of, right? Like the Ring Central example. On the sales side, you mentioned you getting some more sales support potentially. What are some of the things that are been challenging on the sales side for you guys, and how are you thinking about solving that?
Well, I think we got a little spoiled during COVID. During COVID, it was kind of like if it was on your lot, you could rent it with almost zero effort, but the issue was getting equipment on your lot to begin with. Mm-hmm. So now that COVID's ending, I think a lot of people are kind of seeing flattening growth. So you got to start getting a little more creative and trying to get that business in the door. So we can't just sit at the phones and wait for a call. We need to start calling. There's inactive customer list in your software. Start calling some of them. Making some outside sales calls, and there's just different things you can do to help drive some customers back in your door, as well as just some online advertising. We've increased that budget. Google My Business, working on that, getting reviews, having an attractive storefront on My Business. There's tons of things you can do to get attention. That when you're so busy, you don't really think about, but, now it's time to start revisiting.
Is that a common theme, around the flattening growth? Because, I've heard, I think the ARA adjusted their growth forecast for this year down, but it was still like, I forgot the number, 7% or 9%. But I think there's nuance in that because I think the nationals are growing really fast, but depending on where you are, it doesn't mean every rental company is growing. I think the independents may be in a different situation. Is that another theme coming out of some of your groups? It's like, hey, things are a little flatter. It's been a little more challenging to grow. It's obviously different than it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, pretty much everyone I've talked to has been flattening out in growth this year. Not necessarily down, but they're definitely not seeing that crazy growth you were getting through COVID. Another issue that, people are running into is, during COVID, you're just putting your name on all sorts of equipment to buy. And, you were taking everything you can get because you couldn't get anything. And, you kind of kept that habit up. And then, now that this growth is, revenue's flattening, and you keep taking this stuff, your dollar utilization of your equipment starts dropping. So there's just, you got to adjust your habits, I guess. It's definitely got a little more challenging. We got a little spoiled there for a couple of years on that front.
Yeah. Has it been challenging getting your teams on board for that? Because I think I can imagine like you're a sales rep and life is good. People come in, name your price, you rent it. And now it's like, hey, you got to go find some customers, inactive customers. You got to get out there more often. Has that been challenging managing that change management?
Well, actually, I have a quarterly meeting tomorrow, and this is one of my topics.
Talking how let's see how this.
Yeah, so it's all very new. I haven't really introduced it to them yet. I don't think it'll be challenging. They want the company to do well too. So I think just getting some ideas and measurables in place to start seeing the results we want to see will be it. I don't think it'll be too hard to do. We don't have any outside sales guys right now. It's all inside sales. So that's another thing I'm looking at is maybe adding outside sales. So staff. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's time thing to change, right? Like if you had equipment, it was all inside focused, and now things are more competitive, right? You have to go generate some business. That theme is coming up more and more often. On the quarterly meeting, is that part of traction for you guys? Is this the first time you've done that?
Well, that was kind of the first thing I pulled out of the traction when I read it. So it's not officially up to their standard, but I already had this scheduled on the books for us. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this meeting and then kind of redo how I do it. But I basically have a presentation, and anybody in the company that wants to come can come to it. And we just go through some data, go through some issues, ideas, and goals. And I think this is my third one I've done, and even just doing that, like I could already see an improvement, and like just different, like whatever, like if you can measure it, you can manage it. I think is what someone says, or what they say in traction. So just like reviews were a big thing we started working on, and it's funny how just simply looking at that and saying we're going to work on that this quarter, we went from like 12 reviews at one location to 80 in a couple months, and it's like that store has been open 20 years, and we only had 12. And just by, if you start focusing on different little things, you can actually, make some big results. But, without...
Actually, I think talks about like scoreboards too, and like having something visible, like, hey guys, North Star for the quarter reviews, you put that up somewhere, they can see it publicly. It's amazing what starts to happen, right? All of a sudden there's 12 reviews that used to be one a month, turn into 30 a month, right? Because that's priority.
Yeah. Yeah, if you start measuring things, I think you'll start improving things, because otherwise it just slips to the back of your mind, and you just forget about it. Get caught up in the day to day.
And how transparent have you been on sharing some of the metrics? Obviously, some things you probably keep to the owner level, but there's a balance, right? When you are sharing metrics and sort of the vision and how the company's performing, how transparent are you typically with your team?
There's some things I keep to myself, but I'm pretty transparent. And it kind of depends on what issues I'm trying to tackle. Accounts receivable, like days to pay used to be an issue. We've been working on that. So I've been sharing that data on the average day to pay. And then some other things that I think just show general company health, like new customer count and average contract size. So you can see, how many new customers are walking in the door. I also try to show them like category revenue, for like a quarter, at this location, what's really bringing in your money here. And, I think they're working there every day. They see it, but, it's kind of nice to see like, okay, this is where a lot of your business is coming from. Who's renting that? Do we need to get more? Missed rental reports, or missed rental data is extremely important. We used to not track that, and I can't believe we didn't. I can't think of another piece of data that would be as important as missed rentals. Like, it's literally telling you what you're missing out on. So I think that's very important to track. So we've been tracking that more. And
so if I was going to be a fly on the wall tomorrow and attend your meeting,
okay.
December 2024, right? Things are slowing down. We got to get some outbound going. What are the top 3 metrics that your team should be thinking about, right? And I think that changes based on what the economic situation is, how the business is performing, the vision of the company. But where we are today, what are the top 3 metrics that your team's going to be focused on and trying to improve for the next 90, 180 days?
So that's a good question. Let me think here. So you were trying to improve dollar utilization. So, that's basically anything sales related or opening another location, spreading some of that fleet out. We're going to start, we developed that accountability chart. We're going to start trying to have different people accountable for different things in the business. I think that's going to help get some things done, because it then comes back to you to handle everything. So start pushing on some other guys here. He said metrics, so let me think.
Or top three big rock, right? So you're talking dollar utilization is important, accountability is important. What else would be important for you for the team right now?
Working on our culture too. I think we get a great culture here, but I think we have some improvements. And just going back to, is what we're doing or what's happening, is that something we align with as a company? It's easy to make excuses for things happening. And I found out that it's better just to address those head on and get them fixed, because it really can be kind of toxic in your organization. So really working on our culture, accountability, and our dollar utilization problem. And then kind of on a side thing, I've been working on our advertising and just social media involvement, started doing some YouTube videos, different things like that, just to kind of, try to get our name out there a little more.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a second, but it sounds like dollar utilization, top of mind, is a business metric, right? But the other two are more people related, accountability chart and then culture. I guess two questions. What is an accountability chart? I think I know what it is, but like, what do you mean by that? Number one. And number two, what are some of the changes you want to make in the culture, right? Because culture is a broad term, can mean 1,000 things, 1,000 people, but in particular for your business, what are some of the improvements or changes you want to see in your organization?
So I think I would describe an accountability chart as basically an org chart, but with what each person's accountable underneath that. And you can have some KPIs and other things, but it's basically, we were operating flat, like as a flat leadership for so long. Everybody works everywhere and does what's needed. And, as you get bigger, that kind of just creates some issues. And, you try to delegate some tasks and you kind of, you get some, pushback, like, oh, you're not my boss. There's just different things. So I think having some clear defined, things you're accountable and letting the whole company know will kind of help align the company better. And I think it also will help, the flow of issues go through your organization. For example, I don't need to hear about everything that breaks. You need to take that to the shop, and if they need me, they'll come get. It's easy to get involved in every single issue, and that's distracting and stressful. So having a flow of the way your problems go can make things easier for you as an owner. And I think so. Yeah, it's basically an org chart with just some basic things they're accountable for. So
yeah, and I think the biggest thing is also not having multiple people assigned to the same thing, because if you do that, no one's responsible. It's like they've done that.
I agree. Yeah,
there's like psychological sort of experiments where like someone trips and falls on the sidewalk, and if there's one person around, that person is like pretty likely to go help them. But if someone trips and falls and there's 10 people around, like no one goes because everyone thinks someone else is going to do it, right? So, I think for accountability, it's like you got to have one throat to choke, right? Who's the one person, right? I think I've learned that too. If you have 2 people or 5 people, no one actually owns it. So I think also having one owner for any of these items is important.
I agree. Yeah. I think, like if you do want to grow, you got to have a good framework at your base to support that. If you just start trying to, buy other businesses and add other locations and you don't have a good base, it's just going to turn into a mess and you're going to be stressed out. So yeah, if I'm not trying to grow with a location or something at the moment, I'm going to try to improve what we got and make it more efficient. Basically be able to make it operate more on its own. So
I mentioned the Brad Jacobs book, which I just read this weekend, so I'm thinking about it. But obviously they were acquiring a lot of companies, but the culture was so important. You had to integrate it into the existing culture you had. You didn't want to take someone else's culture and sort of have it mismatch. You had to like own your own culture. I mean, how would you define your company culture? Like, what does that mean to you? What does it mean to your employees?
So culture, I guess starts with your core values, and I've came up with some. And I think in the book you're supposed to sit down with your leadership team and develop them. But we've always had a good culture. We've never officially defined it, and that's what I'm trying to do, because I think not having it defined has caused issues, and I think I said earlier, it's easy to make excuses for certain behavior or things going on in your business, and at the end of the day, if you have it defined, you can ask yourself, is what's going on, is that align with our core values? And if it doesn't, then, you need to handle that situation, whether it's an employee issue, a customer issue, or any other things. So I think, defining what your core values are, gives you like a little roadmap to, see is what's going on in your company. Is it aligning with what you set out? So.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I always sort of rolled my eyes on core values for a long time until I started running my own business. Because what I found now that we went through a whole exercise to identify our five, and what I found once a week there's like this always like a tough decision that there's not an easy answer to, and then we fall back to the values. Like what would our values say the answer is? Because the other thought sort of experiment I've been thinking about, if you owned 100% of your company for 100 years, what decision would you be making? Like what is the most long-term optimal decision, right? And then how does that align with your values? So that's the thing that we found helpful. Once you sort of define those, you fall back to them in moments of crisis or hard times. And I don't know if I like that the whole company does. Every week we talk about our values. Every single week we talk about it. We do team shout outs where you give someone a shout out and you assign it to a company value. So it's like sort of reinforcing it. But I think it's so important. And I say as someone who's very skeptical about this 5 years ago,
Yeah.
done right. It's like the lifeblood it's the foundation of your entire organization.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when I first saw core values, I was like, oh, it's just another corporate,
like one of those posters on the wall.
Yeah.
Like a mountain. It's like cool, like perseverance.
Nobody looks at that. But the more I've looked into it and talked to other people, it does give you a good roadmap to fall back onto and, make sure you're doing right.
Yeah. Well, I want to move to our last topic, which you sort of briefly touched on, which was the marketing and advertising in a competitive market, which is where we're in. I love that you're focused on Google My Business, getting those reviews up. We've talked about that on this podcast before. It's so important. Content, super important as well with the YouTube videos, like amazing that you're doing that. And then the advertising as well. But talk to me about your marketing strategy and how that fits into your overall success of the business.
So yeah, marketing is pretty new. I'd never done much marketing because I don't know. I just thought it was a waste of money. But
just like the culture and values thing, it's like
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and during COVID, if you didn't have much sitting on the lot, it was all out. You weren't really thinking, oh, I need to spend some more money on Google Ads. It's more like we need to get this equipment taken care of. But anyway, I think it is more important going forward, especially if you're going to have an e-commerce storefront. You want a lot of website visitors because, I mean, a lot of people, their first impression of your business is either the My Business listing or your website. So, if you're new to the area and you're looking around and, you look at 3 different rental stores, the one that's going to give you more confidence is going to be the one with the developed My Business listing with a lot of reviews and the one with the well-developed website. So I think putting some effort into that is definitely going to pay off. And My Business is free, so having good pictures on that's important, updated information, and getting reviews. Like I said earlier, we weren't we didn't have a lot of reviews, and we prioritized it this quarter, and we've really done good with that. There's one thing that's worked out well for us is giving away hats. If you leave us a review, we'll give you a hat. People love hats, and it's a good way to get them to do the review before they leave the store. Because if they leave the store, they're probably not going to do it. So hat giveaway is kind of a win-win. They wear your logo around and you get a review out of it. So that's worked out well for us. And just simply, asking the customer for a review and making it easy to do so. You can have QR codes, or I got these little cards. They're called Zappy cards. They're NFC cards where you can tap your phone to it. It'll pull up a link. And so just trying to make it as easy as possible to get those reviews. I think it just adds a little legitimacy to your business. It gives buyers confidence that, hey, this company looks like they got it together. I'm going to give them a shot over this other company that, has 5 reviews. So I think it can help, and it really is a low-cost thing. Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, I do those. Rodney Coker, he came on here and said he spent $2,500 a month. And I was like, wow, I would think I was at like $200 a month or something. So I upped that here recently because I didn't realize really what a good budget was, because I do those ads myself right now. And it has been an impressive, you can see all the analytics of clicks and views and impressions, and it does make a difference on your website traffic. So if you do have e-commerce or a good website, I think it's a good combination there to do.
Yeah, as you mentioned a few things I want to sort of ask a question about. One is so essentially someone comes into your store, they give you a review in person, show it to you if they've had a good experience, give them a hat, right? That's sort of, that's so funny. I think the only two people I've heard giving out hats and the scale you guys are you and Ronnie, I guess that's a Tennessee thing. People love the hats.
Well, I stole that idea from Rodney, honestly, because everybody likes hats, and he told me, or I heard how much he was giving away.
And he said, yeah, 20,000 hats, I think he ordered, right?
I don't know. He had a crazy amount. I was like, I need to step it up too. So I kind of combined my issues there, and I stole that idea from Rodney as well.
Cool. And then on the SEO side, like you mentioned, the Google My Business, and when people search equipment rental near me, I think it's so important to be on the top three, like the Google 3-pack, right? You have to be in the top three. To be number 4 or 5, it's a massive drop off, right? So and how you've done that, right? Reviews help you rank higher. You have an SEO strategy. It doesn't need to be crazy, because we found the equipment rental industry, it's not insanely competitive on SEO. I think if you do the basics right, you're going to be in the top 3 for the most part. So a lot of people don't do anything on that. And you don't need to be SEO experts at all. So find a group that can help you with it. It's not that expensive, and getting in that top 3, the 3-pack for Google for, equipment rental near me at the very top, it's just so important.
Oh, I agree for sure. Yeah, people just look at the top ones. They don't go. If you're on the second page, you're definitely not going to get clicked on. So I think it's important.
The other thing on the YouTube videos, Joe Valen, who came on 2 weeks ago, talked about how like 50%, I think, of their volume of their rentals are inbound, and most of that's attributed to their content they put out. So like YouTube videos, and a lot of it's like, how do I fix this piece of equipment, right? And he'll post videos about that in the Facebook groups, and people search for it online, and they've become a thought leader because people are looking to solve a particular problem. You've helped them solve that, right? You've engendered trust with that potential renter. How long have you been doing the YouTube videos? Is it content? Is the content focused on, fixing equipment, things like that? Is it promoting your brand? Like, how have you thought about that part?
So I started first with one of our headaches, which is, customers calling in, not knowing how to use. It's usually like bucket lifts, so not knowing how to operate a towable lift. Even though you showed them in the yard, and I was like, man, it sure would be nice to be able to say, hey, watch this video. If you can't figure it out after that, give us a call back, and we'll go from there. But so I started with more of instructional videos, mainly surrounding aerial lifts, because those seems to be the most common calls we get for like issues with the customer. So I created, I think I started about a month ago with those, and I think I've got almost 1,000 views total now, which is more than I was expecting. And I think it just kind of goes along with trying to create like a brand that's, involved in many different aspects. And like on our website, I have those videos embedded with each particular lift's page. So if they're looking at that lift, like the pricing and the specs, they can look at the video I made and watch it at their house. So I'm just trying to be more present and active on those fronts. And we'll see. I think I'll do okay with them, because there's not a ton of rental stores making YouTube content right now. So I think you kind of stand out a little more if you get started early. So
I think there's a huge advantage for rental companies to lean into marketing. You don't need to be, like I said, go crazy, but doing basic advertising, a couple thousand a month, the hats, the reviews, getting the top 3 rankings on Google My Business, and then content. Like I said, I've just talked to enough groups. Weston from Impact Rental has been doing content. Crushing it. Bennett in Florida is doing it. Joe Valen. It's younger people, right? It's like our age. And the other thing people are putting on TikTok, which I don't have TikTok. My wife loves it, but like even getting, once you have the content, you can use it for multi-purpose, right? You can put it on YouTube, snip it, put it on TikTok. People are consuming content. And I think like we're talking about what Brian from Sunbelt said, like the next 5 years of rental is omni-channel. If they're going to go to your website, they're going to see your reviews, they're going to watch your TikTok, they're going to come in your store. Like all those things together ultimately build a great brand and a great rental business. And I think that's something else. Like we've started putting TikTok stuff out there, but I don't know. This younger generation, Gen Z comes in, right? That's sort of where this goes.
Well, I think like you said on the advertising, I think in another podcast, you got to start investing early. You're not going to necessarily see a return right away, But, a year from now, who knows what it's going to, what effects it's going to have on your business. And I think on the last podcast you guys had, he was talking about how he was just creating YouTube videos that solves problems and not necessarily trying to create a polished advertisement. And I think that does resonate better with our customers. They don't feel like they're being sold to. They feel like their problem, their questions getting answered. So, you don't have to have a professional studio to create content, because I know mine's for sure not. But you can
people
still
want authenticity, right? They want authenticity.
Exactly, yeah.
Elliot Vigils told me people love to buy and they hate to be sold to, and anything that's whiffs of sales is like, I don't know, for me, turn it off, right? So just put content, helping people. It's also like a karma aspect of it. You put that out there long enough, I think it starts to come back too. So generally just helping people, helping your community, I think is important.
Yeah, I agree. And it helps us too. If it saves a service call, that saves us money. So,
right?
Two-way street there. So
exactly. Well, it's an awesome episode, Grant. We're out of time. Final question, maybe just think about one piece of advice you would have given yourself 5 years ago. You've owned the business yourself now for a year and a half. You've sort of acted like an owner longer than that, but you've had a lot of success. What's one piece of advice you would give yourself 5 years ago?
I wish I would have gotten some better rental software sooner. I had a hard time justifying the cost initially because mine was so cheap at the time. But the amount of data and insight I've gotten into my business, and I feel like I actually know what's going on now, not just, gut feeling it through every decision I was making. So that's been really helpful. I think has opened up a lot of opportunities for us.
Great. I agree. Rental software is the backbone. You got to have a good one. Super important. So, Grant, thanks for coming on. Congratulations on being one of the recent ARA 12 to watch under 40. So congratulations on that. And thanks again for being an active listener of the podcast and coming on yourself.
All right. No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Grant. See ya.
All right. See ya.